Okay, now what we want to do is be able to persist a login even if the user refreshes the page. And in order to achieve that, when the app first loads up, we're going to need to check our local storage to see if we've got a token in there. And if there is a token, then we're going to go and get the user object from our API and then store it in our store. Because as soon as we refresh, then all of our MobX store state gets reset. So as soon as we refresh our page, we no longer have a user object that we can get the information from. So we're going to go and get that from the API when we start our app. And to do this, we're going to go and take a look at a feature of MobX called reactions. And we haven't used these yet, but this is a good opportunity to take a look at them. So let's go back to our common store to do this. Now, what we're doing here is we're setting a token property inside here, and we're giving it an initial value of null. But what we can do is we can specify that our token is going to be a type of string, or it's going to be null. But what we're going to do is set this to window.localStorage, and we're going to get item and JWT. So as soon as our store loads, then we're going to attempt to get our item from the local storage, or our token from the local storage. And then what we can do is we can react to this value changing. And in order to react to a value changing, we can use a reaction. And we do this inside of the constructor. So what we'll do, we'll say reaction. And inside the parameters here, this takes an expression. And the first parameter here is what we want to react to. And the expression we need to add is add a function and say list.token. This is what we're reacting to. The second parameter, we pass the token as a parameter, and then we can do something. So we can say if token, then we can say window.localStorage.setItem and JWT, and pass in the token. And if we don't have a token, then we can say window.localStorage.removeItem and specify JWT. So this reaction doesn't run when the store initially loads or the store is initialized, but it only runs when there's a change to list.token. So our token when our component first loads is going to be either null, because we simply don't have a token in application storage, or it's going to be the string of the token. And this reaction is not called at this point. When it's getting the token, this reaction is only called after it changes. There's another type of reaction we can use with MobX called auto run, which would run every single time. And we don't want to use that here because we're checking to see if we've got a token inside storage anyway. And if we did have a token, then we would run this line of code, and it's a bit pointless because we don't need to set the token if it's already been set. So what we can do then, and we can remove this line of code from the setting of the token. We don't need that anymore if we're doing this inside a reaction, because as soon as we execute this function and set the token to whatever the token is, then our reaction is going to run and do whatever is appropriate based on whether we have a token or it's null. So what we also need is we need to go to our user store, and we want a method to go and get the user that matches that token. And we have a method in our API to do so. And what we'll do is we'll call this method getUser, and we'll make it an async method. And what we'll do is we'll add the try, and we'll say const user equals await, and then we'll say agent.account and current. And then we'll say list.user equals user, but we need to do this in a run in action. So we'll say list.user equals user, and we'll catch any error, and all we'll do here is just log out to the console. So what we want to do now is take a look at our app startup. Now our root component is the one that we need to do this in. This is the component that loads when our application first starts up. So what we'll need to do inside here is we'll need to go and get both our common store and our user store. So we'll say const common store and user store equals use store. And our function's laid out a bit differently in here. We want to make sure this is an observer, and it is. And then what we can use is a use effect to do something when this component loads. And what we'll do is we'll say use effect and we'll add the callback function. And what we'll do, we'll say if common store.token, then effectively our user is logged in. So we'll go to the user store and we'll say get user. And then what we'll use is finally, and after we've got the user, we'll say common store and we'll say set app loaded to turn off a loading flag that we're going to add very shortly. And if we do not have a token, then we'll add an else statement and we'll say common store and we'll just simply say set app loaded. And we'll just add the dependencies in here as well, and we need to add the common store as a dependency and the user store also as a dependency here. And then what we want to do is add a loading flag so that we only attempt to load this JSX after this flag is set to true. So what we'll do is we'll just say if, and we'll say common store with exclamation mark for the not operator, and say app loaded. Then we're going to return our loading component, and we'll give it some content equal to loading app ... So if we go and take a look, then this is going to fail miserably at the moment. So let's go to our home page just to demonstrate what I'm talking about here. And we see a server error straight away. And that's because we've got a token in local storage and we're calling the get user function. And what we're trying to do here is go to our user manager and find email by async. So what we need to do is have a way to send up our token if we have it with our request to the API, and we'll take a look at that next.